What is absolute value? We know that these bars indicate absolute value, but what does it mean? The absolute value is the positive distance away from zero on the number line. Well, this is a silly word because we all know that distance can't be negative. So the absolute value of a number is the distance away from zero on the number line. We don't need that word positive. 3 and negative 3 have the same absolute value. 3 is 3 units from 0. Negative 3 is also 3 units from 0. The absolute value of a number is always positive, obviously because distance is positive. So what's the absolute value of negative 8? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The absolute value of negative 8 is obviously 8. The absolute value of 4 is 4. So go ahead and try these. I'll give you a couple minutes, pause, come back and get the answers. So obviously the absolute value of 15 is 15. The absolute value of negative 2 plus 5 is the absolute value of 3, which would be 3. The absolute value of negative 23, how far is negative 23 from 0? Well, it's 23 units from 0. The absolute value of negative 6 minus 1 is actually the absolute value of negative 7. Negative 7 is 7 units from 0. So before we start solving absolute value equations, let's remember one thing. Let's look at a simple equation. The absolute value of x is 3. What can x be? Well, since this is the distance from 0, what number do we know is 3 units from 0? We know that x can be 3, but we also know there's a number this way that has a distance of 0, and it's negative 3. So I have two numbers that fit. The absolute value of x is 3. If I plug 3 into here, the absolute value of 3 is 3. If I plug negative 3 into here, the absolute value of negative 3 is 3. Both solutions work. So let's look at example 1, and let's solve example 1. I have that the absolute value of x plus 8 has to equal 3. What that means is this in here, the absolute value of this has to give me a 3. So I know this number could equal 3, but I know this expression, rather, could equal negative 3 because the absolute value of negative 3 will also equal 3. So I'm going to set up two equations to solve. I know this number inside the absolute value brackets could be 3, but I also know that this number in there could give me negative 3. And if I solve this, I get x equals negative 5. Now let's look at the other side. I subtract 8 from both sides and I get x equals negative 11. With absolute value, you always substitute your solution to make sure it works. So if I substitute negative 5 into here, negative 5 plus 8 is going to give me 3. The absolute value of 3 is 3. Great. Let's check this value. Negative 11 plus 8 gives me negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 gives me 3 as well. So x equals 5 and x equals negative 11. They are both solutions. Now let's look at this right-hand situation. And the first thing you need to do is you need to isolate this absolute value. So I need to move that 6 to the other side. So I'm going to subtract the 6 to the other side. So I subtracted 6 from both sides. Now, hopefully some of you are saying, but Mrs. Irwin, no absolute value can ever give me a negative number because there's no such thing as a negative distance. So the absolute value of whatever's in here, I don't care what it is, cannot equal a negative 6. So this would therefore be no solution. Okay, so before we tackle this one that looks a little different, let's remember what we've been saying. I know in this example, x can either be 3 or the opposite of 3. I know that in this example, x plus 8 can either be 3 or the opposite of 3. So whatever we're doing, we're always taking this and the opposite when I'm solving this equation. So we're going to do the same thing over here. We're going to say 8 plus 5a can either equal this distance from 0, or 8 plus 5a can equal the opposite of this distance from 0. Now I would just solve. So I'm going to add a to the left, and I'm going to subtract 8 from the right. Divide by 6, and I get a equals 1. Now, all of those instructions that I just said, you probably should have put in your notes right here. Add a to this side and get 6a, subtract 8 over here and get 6. Divide and I get a equals 1. Now, if I substitute that in, I get the absolute value of 8 plus 5, substitute that 1 in, equals 14 minus, substitute that 1 in. This is going to give me 8 plus 5, absolute value of 13, equals 14 minus 1, 13, and that checks. Now let's do this one. So the first step I have to do is I have to distribute this negative to both terms. And that you should probably pause and put in your notes. So I get 8 plus 5a equals negative 14 plus a. I'm now going to subtract this a from here. I'm going to get 4a. And I'm going to subtract this 8 from here. And I get negative 22. If I divide by 4 and simplify, I'm going to get negative 11 over 2. I am going to also check this, so I'm going to plug in negative 11 over 2. 8 plus 5, plug in negative 11 over 2, equals 14 minus negative 11 over 2. And if you put this left side in your calculator, you will get 16 over 2 minus 55 over 2, which is the absolute value of, lost you, negative 39 over 2. So the absolute value of negative 39 over 2 is 39 over 2. Let's see what this does. This gets me 28 over 2 plus 11 over 2, which gives me 39 over 2. So this solution also works. Don't forget, 14 I can write as 28 over 2. If I simplify this, I will get 14. A negative and a negative gives me the positive. So 39 over 2 equals 39 over 2. So this one also works. On the back of your worksheet, you have some additional equations. I would like you to work these two before you come to class tomorrow. Have a great night.